How's it going, everybody? Today we're going to learn about alternative tunings. And yeah, we're going to actually talk about three that I've discovered over the last little bit. This is our first tutorial Tuesday that we've done in a long time. We were doing these a lot during quarantine, and once we started back to live services, I shifted most of my attention to that. And I absolutely intended on picking these back up in January, and then the craziest thing happened. Matter of fact, I have a picture of what happened. So check this out right here. That right there is the results of a freak, tragic X-Acto knife incident. I was doing a project and I had just bought a tool and it was still in the packaging and I needed to get it out of the packaging. Instead of being a smart person or even a person of average intelligence, I instead of grabbing scissors, to open the package, I grabbed an X-Acto knife that was just happened to be laying on my tool bench from a previous project. And the next thing you know, the X-Acto knife slips. It goes into the side of my middle finger on my fret hand, okay? And it severs the tendon and the nerve going to the tip of my finger. And it was crazy. It was actually really scary, especially being a lifelong guitarist and musician and worship leader. I'm like, man, what do I do? This is bad. I mean, if it was this hand, it would be a little different story. But on the fret hand, that's a big deal, especially for a guitar player. But thankfully, I had some really important people in my life, special people that walked me through this process. First and foremost, my amazing wife, Angela, my pastor, Kendall Harness, and of course, one of my best friends in the world, and our band director here at our campus, Chad Hart. And they were the voices of encouragement to me through this whole thing. And, they even kind of helped me realize there's more to me than, what I do with the guitar on stage. So through that, I had to learn to do some stuff. People are seeing me back on stage. Maybe you've seen clips of me on the church Facebook, and you're kind of wondering, oh, so I guess he's better now. And the truth is, I'm actually not better, okay? Let me show you just kind of what's going on with my hand here, okay? So this right here, this is how a middle finger is supposed to bend. You see how far the tip of that goes down, okay? Now, on my left hand, which is where I hold the fretboard, it only goes down about that far and stops. That doesn't seem like a whole lot for most things you do in life, like typing, taking out the trash, crunching the 9 to 5 grind, wrestling with your kids. It's okay for that. But those extra few millimeters make a huge difference on playing guitar, especially acoustic guitar, where the superpower of the acoustic guitar, I don't care where you feel about it, it's all about the chord strum. That is the thing the acoustic guitar does better than any other guitar. I'm sorry, that's just kind of what it does in the mix. And acoustic does not have a lot of natural sustain. It's not something that has a lot of overdrive. It's very bright. It can contribute that percussive, An electric just can't do that. I'm sorry. Even though an acoustic can do several other things. But the superpower of the acoustic is that percussive strum, which I had to find a way to reproduce again with pretty much 3.5 fingers. So I was able to work around that with alternative tunings. And so I had to kind of come up with a couple different things. I actually use 4 different tunings when I play, depending upon what the circumstances are, the needs of the set list, and what instrument I'm playing. If I'm playing electric, sometimes it's a little different. So I'm going to talk about alternative tuning number 1, which I refer to as EADGAD. I guess that's how it's actually referred to. It's like DADGAD, except you don't downtune your low E. So it's EADGAD, okay? Now, the beauty about this tuning, even if you don't have a tragic X-Acto knife incident underneath your belt, which I pray you never do, this is a really fun tuning to play in, and it gives your guitar a bigger sound. I'm just going to demonstrate for you. This is like a G chord in EADGAD, okay? So, hear that rich, big tone where normally a G chord would sound kind of like this. And now it's like this. The beauty of this playing is it's very, very simple. All you have to do is whatever chord you are playing in G and D positions, all you're focusing on is the top 4 strings right here. Your low E, your A, your D, and your G. Whatever chord position you're playing, just play whatever fingers are on those notes and then leave your high strings completely open. So, and by the way, I'm going to be moving through this fast. I'm going to include some diagrams for each of these tunings in the links and comments so you can work on them on your own time. So, but let's go through these real quick. So in the key of D, for example, D chord, all I'm doing is literally one finger right here. It's a second fret of the G string, and I'm just leaving the high strings open. So that's the 1 in the key of D. The 2, your E minor substitution. Play it the same way a normal E minor would be. Your F sharp minor, I'm using 3 notes here. You can kind of tell it's kind of like a backwards power chord, kind of. Leaving those open. G. Just the top 2 notes only of the G chord. Others ring freely. The A. And then B minor, which you have 2 options. You can either play a B power chord and leave the high strings open, like this. Or you can do kind of the B minor 7 with just 2 notes. And the only different note you have to do for key of G is you have to do a C, which is just the top 2 notes of a C chord. Like that. Here is the downside to this tuning. The upside is that sounds really neat. The big downside is 2 things. First and foremost, you can only do these variation shapes and other shapes that you can discover just for that tuning. Your normal chord shapes don't work anymore. And if you try to do them, it sounds weird. So there's G. Now let's say I want to try to do a normal G shape. It sounds a little weird. I try to go for a D shape. It's crazy. So that is E-add-gad. And the other downside is you can only really play this to its fullest potential in the key of D and the key of G. You can still work your way around other keys, don't get me wrong, but they kind of loses that thing that makes it a beautiful tuning. So to work around it, you have to have a capo, which you should anyway. I don't know why anybody doesn't want a capo. It's kind of like if I was a drummer and somebody said, well, all you really need is a crash ride. If you have a crash and a crash ride, you're cheating. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. So a capo is part of a guitar player's instrument as far as I'm concerned, okay? So if I wanted to play in the key of F, I can put it on fret 3, back to D positions. And so, especially with me, with this finger not working right, sometimes not only does it not move where it needs to be to get on a string, sometimes it doesn't move out of the way so this finger can do what it needs to do. So I had to find a tuning that in a pinch I could play with just these 2 fingers, which I do a lot. So, matter of fact, every single one of these positions, I'm just using my pinky and my ring finger. All right, that's E-add-gad. Now, the other one that is similar to it, you may have heard before, is called dad-gad. It is same thing, but you're going to drop your low E to a D. So it's D-A-D-G-A-D. So your A, D, and G strings are still the same. They would be on a normal guitar. You just have to know that your low E, your high E, and your B are dropped down 2 fret spaces. So the superpower of dad-gad, like E-add-gad, is the same. It's meant to be played in key of D shapes variations and key of G shape variations. The added bonus of dad-gad, as opposed to E-add-gad, is you get the low D. Now, it does kind of change things a little bit when you're doing your chords, but it's not bad. Pretty much if you're used to playing power chords and drop D, you're going to do a lot of that. So a G shape is going to be like a 5th fret, all 3 strings, low strings, and you can just let the bottom when the high strings ring out. And if you really want to do something different, you could always take a finger and put it on the 4th fret of the G string. Give it a little bit more major lift. Your E, again, would be 2nd fret power chord. E minor that is. F sharp. Gets a little interesting. 4th fret power chord with, you can also add in the 2nd fret of the G. Again, these diagrams will be included. Your A would be the same as you would play the other positions I showed you earlier. B minor is the same. C is the same in the previous tuning. So there's not a whole lot of difference. But one of the kind of cool tricks you get is that low D. So now your D chord just sounds really full. So there's a lot of good songs that are in the key of D. You can also do regular power chords with this tuning and just leave everything open. So if you're familiar with, your 5 chords, you can do, say, like a D power chord, just leave it all open. B minor power chord, leave it all open. And just gives it that full sound. So, neat applications for this. We do a song called Glorious Day a lot in our set. And I want to say the original recording. If it's not in an open D tuning, it's meant to be in an open D tuning. Because typically, when we're in standard, we're just kind of roughing it the best we can. But when we're in Dadgad or something similar, and you have that drone, you can do something like this. You get all that extra drone going on from that low D. Then I met you. So, really cool stuff. Here's the third one. Third one is actually my favorite. It is probably the one that has the most variations out of all of these. And let me show you what I'm doing here. This one, the same rules apply for the chord variation. So the chord variations I showed you on E-Ad-Gad, the first one, are going to be the same. But it has some added bonuses to it. Now, how this works is the entire guitar is tuned down 2 fret spaces. So this is actually an F now, not a G. So just keep that in mind. The next thing this requires is a cut capo. Now these I think go for like $20. This is the Diodario one, and it only covers your A, D, and G strings. You can also make one of these. I've made one of these before. You can take a Kaiser capo and a pair of wire cutters, and you can actually craft one of these yourself if you've got an extra capo laying around. If you just want to experiment with it before you drop $20 and you know you've got another capo you're not using, they're actually not hard to make. But they do actually make these. They only go on the 2nd fret. So, like that. Now, all of the chords, chord voicings, by the way, this is the new fret 1 when you do this method, because the guitar's down-tuned, so this is fret 1 now. All the same chord variations apply. So, there's the G we looked at earlier, the A, the B minor, the C, the D. There's your E minor. The only thing I'm doing different on E minor is I am not playing the low string because it's cut on the low string. Here is where it gets really neat. Not only do you have those variations, you can still play your traditional chord shapes. So I can go back and forth between a normal G and then the E-Ad-Gad G, which is really neat. You can do that pretty much on most of the chords. There's a couple variations you can't do. This is still for key of D and key of G shapes, by the way. And then you have the added bonus of you still get the low D on your D songs. You just got to know that your 2 fret space is higher. So you get the low D from Dadgad, okay? But then you get traditional chord shapes that you're used to. So you don't have to relearn any chords. You're playing the same thing that you've always played. Now you just have some options that you didn't previously have before. By far, whoever invented this was ingenious. Matter of fact, if you're really old school, I believe this came out about the same time as an old worship song called I'm Forgiven. I think it was by Billy Foote or something. Gives you that option of that walking bass line. I'm forgiven because you were forsaken. You know, if you remember that song, I think that was probably one of the breakout songs that kind of used that, and then others started using it. You know, I know that alternative tunings are nothing new. There's probably a lot of videos out there on them. I do know that in the church world, especially with worship leaders, a lot of us don't mess with them because, again, some of it is because we don't want to switch guitars on stage and relearn to tune, and because the standard tuning is really the multi-purpose tuning of all time. It's the Swiss Army knife of tuning. It can just fit into any circumstance really, really easy. But I encourage you to try this out. I'm probably going to keep this in my arsenal. Hopefully my finger heals up all the way, and even if it does, I'm probably still going to keep playing like this because it gives me options that I didn't have. So I could be playing the verse like this. And then let's say on a chorus, the electric guitar player went to full distorted chords. I can now play higher doing that. And I didn't have to relearn any of my fingering. It's all a matter of just using technology to your advantage. So there you have it. One other thing about this. You can play more keys with a cut capo, but you will need a second capo. Transitions do get a little wonky sometimes, but you can get around it. So playing a key of G, if I need to play G sharp, I just move this up one and I put another capo behind it and I'm in G sharp. So you just have to kind of work your transitions or be mindful of your transitions when you use that. Moral of the story: when you have a tragic X-Acto knife incident, first of all, don't play with X-Acto knives, okay, for anything. Never touch an X-Acto knife, especially not to open packaging with. Use scissors. Secondly, when you have something that makes you question what you're going to do from now on, don't ask yourself, can I do it? Say, what will I do? With me, it really wasn't a matter of can I play guitar again? It was, will I play guitar again? And I think that's something we need to do. We need to think about in life in general. It's not about what we can or can't do. It's what will we do? There's a lot of musicians I run into all the time, and tragically, they can play, they can do all kinds of stuff, but they aren't. They're sitting around and maybe they're complaining about how other musicians do stuff, but they're not actually doing the thing themselves. My encouragement is get out there and do it. What will you do? I hope this has helped you out. If you have any questions about any of this, feel free to give me a shout, chime in below, and y'all have a great day.